Hello everyone, welcome back again. As you can see, the poor old donor car is looking a little bit sad. We've been able to get the back of the car cut away in preparation to transfer some of the AU equipment over to FTR3. And we've also got FTR3 over on the other side of the workshop that's had a lot of the BA hardware removed. So hopefully we'll meet somewhere in the middle and have an AU FTR Falcon at the end of it. But I thought I'll put this update together and bring you up to speed where we got to, because there has been a little bit happen since our last video. So since our last video, there's been a lot of questions and commentary around what's original and what's not on the car. So I thought I'll go into some detail on that now we've got the back of the car removed. Now we covered off in our last video the cage and some of the modifications that were done during its racing life at FTR, roughly 2001. And we've also covered the changes that were made to the cage for it to become a ride car. Now the good news is on the back half of the cage, the only bars that need to be replaced are straight bars, so there's nothing overly complicated about it, and all the trailing arm boxes and shock points and everything are all original, so none of that needs to be changed, which is good news. Now, where I guess there's some decisions that need to be made, and I'd be interested to get your input, if you look at the back of the car, a lot of this is original. So as an example, this car's a little bit different. So when they finish their racing life, they normally go to say a Super 2 team or a Konica series or Fujitsu series, Dunlop series, whatever it was back in the day. So a lot of the cars get purchased and then they get raced for many years, and there's damage and panels replaced and bars replaced and whatever happens due to racing damage. This car finished in 2003 with David Bernard and ProDrive. It raced its last race, and then that was it. It didn't get sold on to a Super 2 team. It didn't get raced again. It was only to be then used as a ride car. It did do some a race or two here and there more recently, which we'll cover in a future video, but it wasn't actually crash and bash throughout the development series at the time. So a lot of the steel work you're looking at now is exactly how it finished its main game supercar life. Now, as an example, you look at the whole side of the car, there's little dents and witness marks that suggest it has been raced. But if you have a look up the side of it where the quarter panels, the rear quarter panels are secured, that metal's getting fairly fatigued. There's been many quarter panels secured to that section of the car over its life. Now, normally, if that was a Super 2 car, that would have been replaced several times and there'd be no connection between its main game life and where the car is today. Given this car didn't race competitively after it finished in the main game, that is original. Now, the question is, do we cut all that out and replace that whole section and lose all that originality for the sake of making it perfect? Or do we repair it, leave it in the car, and know that the footage from 2003, even 2002, is that exact door jamb that still lives on? So just little things like that. Same thing with the rear rails. There is a little bit of damage there. We've covered in a previous video that unique kink in the rail which happened at the Canberra street race in 2002. Do we cut all that out and replace it for the sake of making it perfect, or do we leave that in the car because it tells a story? Personally, and I'm interested to get your opinion, I'm all for leaving a lot of that originality in the car. So even though it's not perfect, it still measures up okay. We can still get door jams, door gaps, everything perfect. I'm all for leaving that in the car. Now, the car did race over a 4-year period, which is a little bit unusual for cars of this era. Some of them didn't make it, didn't race on past 1 or 2 years. So I guess it's a little bit unique. As I said in the earlier video, of all the FTR cars, it did the most amount of racing as far as the competitive years. So we'd like to try and, I guess, the restoration have the tribute to the car, which does represent all its years it raced in the main game, not just say 2000 Bathurst. So the car, if we do restore it to say 2000 Bathurst livery and spec, if there are little signs there, as an example, those extra bars under the dashboard we covered in the last video that were added in 2001, I'm tempted to leave them there, because it does, when you look at the logbook, you look at the documentation, it does say that this car ran over a 4-year period. So leaving little hints and storylines from that period in the car, even though it presents in the livery from a specific year, I believe it would be good to leave that in the car because it does have a long racing history. So now looking at the progress we've made over the last week, we had Matty Kay back in the workshop for a day this week, which is really good. and his sole purpose was to remove the BA bodywork from the back of FTR3. As you'll see in this time lapse, it wasn't a 2-second job. All the panels were actually fitted properly, they were all welded on, so it was quite a mission, but we got there in the end. Matt actually did do the alloy panel work as well, so he did have a little bit of experience on converting a BA back to an AU, which isn't overly common. So one thing that's quite interesting with this restoration, the alloy Falcon, they did leave the original AU Falcon floor in it, even after the BA restoration was done. You can actually see in this footage here, the original spare wheel turret is still there, and it was all welded in with a little plate over the top. FTR, when they built this car, they left all the original rails in, obviously, but they cut the whole floor out, so we didn't have that issue to deal with. Now, there's obviously an RHS or a box section for the fuel cell. You can see there that runs between the rails and the back of the car. That's all original, and so are the rails. So there's a lot of originality in the boot, which is really good. We just cut all the welds off, all the spot welds off, and that whole BA section came off quite easily. So if we come over to our donor AU back end, so we've cut it off the donor car, as you can see. It's all just been roughly hacked off at this stage. Obviously we've covered the need. We don't need the boot floor. We can get all that done as it was back in the day, just for using flat panel and getting it replicated. And obviously we'll graft this AU section onto the FTR chassis to convert it back to how it was. Now, we're not too sure exactly how we're going to do it yet. The alloy Falcon, it was joined, if I come over this way, it was joined through this section just here. So the parcel shelf was all original and it was grafted on from that point. Now, the reason why you've got to do it from that point is the AU windscreen is rounded, where the BA windscreens are square. So that's why that section is a little bit different. And on the alloy AU, it was grafted at that exact point there where it was, it's got that double lip there. So that was flattened out and the BA section was grafted on. If we come over to FTR3, what they've actually done is cut that section out and TIG welded some little plates in. So if you see that oval there as a reference point, if we come over back to the donor section, there's your oval there. So it's actually been cut through here, and then that whole section's been grafted on. So that's all original AU, and then from here back was obviously converted to BA. So the point that we'll need to graft this on is from here, and then convert it back to how it was as an AU Falcon. So we'll probably use a little bit of the rear parcel shelf, just where some of that rust and some of the holes in that are, just to tidy it up a little bit. And you'll see here some of this section where the rear quarter panels have to be attached. That's looking a bit sad. So we'll just tidy it all up, but we'll leave as much of it as original as we can. So scooting back over to the donor car, as you can see, there's not a lot left of it, but another thing we do need to utilise is the roof. So you'll see here, it has got that rounded edge where the BA was square. So we've been working, we've unpicked the roof and saved it, and all that's just sitting there at the moment. So that'll all come off and that'll be all secured onto FTR3 once we've done some minor repairs. So really that's about it for what we need off this car. Obviously we do need the front section, radiator support and headlight buckets and bits and pieces, which we'll cut out of it. But really the focus at the moment is getting the back on the car and the roof, so then we can get the bar work done and we'll get that underway. So hopefully the next time you see the car, we'll have an AU back end grafted on, or at least sitting there, so we can line it all up. We've got a boot, we've got a fair bit of stuff there for it, so there's going to be a fair bit of work getting everything to line up. But the rails themselves are square, which is good. We'll do some tidy up jobs under here, and then we can start getting that AU back end on FTR3, and hopefully it'll present as an AU again for the first time in over 20 years. So I'll keep you updated. If you follow the Facebook page, there are photos that are put up fairly consistently. So if you keep an eye on that, and hopefully we'll have some exciting news for you, and FTR3 isn't too far away of presenting again as an AU Falcon. Thanks again for your support. We'll have more for you as soon as we're ready. Thank you.